So it's going to show us how to kind of write down all of those information, the unit of observation, the variables, the population, the sample, and so forth from an example. So let's look at an example. I actually collect a survey of my students in my statistics class. And they would be things like, what is your car? What kind of job do you have? What is your gender? How many miles do you live from the Logan Tree campus? What's your favorite ice cream flavor? How much do you pay in rent? What's your major? How tall are you? Your opinion of winter, and how many tattoos do you have? So these are all questions I ask my students every semester. And then what I might want to do is then analyze this data. So let's figure out what our unit of observation is in this case. So my unit of observation in this case is just a student in a stats class. Notice that it's just one person. It's not any more than that. I'm just thinking of that unit, that one thing I'm going to measuring. I'm not measuring just one student, but my unit is just that one object. The variables are what do I measure from them. So there's lots of different variables I measured. I measured their height, their car, their rent paid, their opinion of winter, their favorite ice cream flavor. I measured the number of tattoos. There's a lot of other things I did measure. I measured the major and I measured their distance from campus and a few other things. I can't remember everything we measured, but these are all different variables that were going to be in this survey. What I want to do is I want to look at the population. And again, the population could be any one of these variables we're dealing with. I'm going to pick favorite ice cream flavor. There's no good reason to do that. It's just the one I felt like picking on. Again, it's the one you're interested in. You have all these variables you measured, but this is just one I'm interested in. So in this case, my population would be the set of favorite ice cream flavor from all the students in the stats class. So notice I now have the word all in there. It's all of them. I've told my reader I'm dealing with just the favorite ice cream flavor. I have all these variables over here. All these variables over here I can measure. This is the one I'm interested in. So it's telling my reader and myself which variable I'm going to look at, which one I'm going to analyze is the favorite ice cream flavor, and then who I'm actually measuring it from. My sample in this case would be just the ones I actually measured. So this would be for all of them. Um, but this one's only going to be for that one class. So my class has 24 students, or we could go 30 students. We'll go with 30. Sometimes I have 30, depending on my class. So that would be what I could have. Now, I may collect this over several semesters, so I may have more than 30 in my actual data set in the end, but 30 would be what I'm going to collect every semester in there. And again, I'm telling my reader, what variable in this giant grouping giant data set I'm interested in. I'm saying how many I measured it from, which is only 30 instead of all of them, and who I measured from. So now we're going to talk a little bit about what we call data wrangling. Data wrangling is really what it means. It doesn't really mean cleaning the data, but in a way you can think of it as cleaning the data, but it's more putting the data into a usable form. And so what I'm going to look at here is I'm going to look at what we call a tidy data set. So I'm actually going to look at the tidy data set. Here is my tidy data set. And here you can see I've got what kind of car they drive. I've got one student here and all their information. I then have a second student here and all their information. So every single row here is a different student's answers. And every column here is the answers to that one question. What kind of car do you have? Here's all the different cars that are in that list. Do you have a job? Here's all the different answers to that. What major do you have? I know it's here somewhere. Yeah, here it is. There's all the information. So this is known as a tidy data set because every row is a unit of observation's answers, in this case, a student's answers, and every column is an individual distinct variable. And that's what makes it a tidy data set. When we want to wrangle it, what it means is we want to make it into a more usable form. One thing is I can't use these long titles here. Certainly can't have question marks in it. This is what my Google form gave me, but I need to rename all my columns to be something that makes sense as a variable. Something that still describes this column, but not this long of it. So I would need to change all my titles of my columns to be one word um in such a way. I can make it be two words, but I'd have to use like I can't have spaces, so I could use something that kind of puts them together. So I'd have to make all of these something different. What I also noticed is that um for the major, there are people whose majors are nursing, and some people have nursing with a capital N, and some people have nursing with a lowercase n. The software that you deal with would consider those two different things. So we would need to wrangle these so that they are actually using the same wording so that we don't have them counting them as different. So you might need to change those. I don't see an example in this case of this, but sometimes on there's a question mark. I can't have a question mark. I have to do an NA. Um, there are some people, and I haven't seen it in this case, but sometimes people put in their height as 6 feet 1 inch, and I can't deal with that. So I would have to wrangle that to change that into a value that makes sense. And so that's what wrangling is about, is to just make the data set in something that will work. So here's an example. Some people put down that they live 5 miles. Some people just put one as their data value. This person actually said roughly 1.4 miles. So I would need to get rid of all these miles and make these just into numbers, because otherwise the software system will treat these wordings as qualitative variables and these numbers as quantitative. And so it would not know what to do with all this. So we would have to change all that to make them be the same. So that would be what wrangling is about, is to try to clean that up to make it into a more usable form. And so we get into this nice tidy data set.